Hey guys, welcome back to the Strength for Generations podcast. Krista Baker here, and today I need you to sit down for this one. What I'm about to share with you is going to make you question everything your doctor has ever told you about your iron issues, your fatigue, and women's health. So if you're a mom who's constantly exhausted, if you've been told that you're iron deficient and you need to take iron supplements, if you're dealing with heavy, painful periods that leave you drained, if you are struggling through perimenopause or menopause, feeling like your body is falling apart, or if you're worried about your kids getting sick all the time despite doing everything right, this episode is a game changer. Husbands, I want you to hear this one too, because you are married to the woman who might be suffering, or you have a parent or a sister or an aunt or a daughter that needs to hear this message today. I'm sitting down again with Piotr Slawinski, the brilliant man behind the patented protein glucoferrin, and he is about to expose one of the biggest medical myths that has kept you sick and tired. Here's what most doctors won't tell you, and honestly, most of them don't even know this. Your fatigue isn't from iron deficiency. Your heavy periods aren't because you need more iron, and those prenatal vitamins loaded with iron you're taking, they might be doing more harm than good. Piotr is going to explain the real science behind why women develop iron overload, not deficiency, why your body is desperately trying to dump excess iron through heavy periods, and why the iron-fortified foods we're feeding our kids are setting them up for a lifetime of health problems. We're talking about the connection between iron overload and everything from gestational diabetes to osteoporosis, why breastfeeding is absolutely critical for your baby's immune system, and how understanding this one biochemical process could transform your family's health forever. This isn't just another health podcast. This information could literally save your life and your children's lives. If you want to learn more about how glucoferrin supports your body's natural iron regulation and helps build the healthy red blood cells you actually need, head over to bakerfamilyfitness.com/glucoferrin, and you spell that GLUCOFERRIN. Make sure you do that after this episode. There's a form there that you guys can fill out if you have questions about anything, and we will support you and get back to you. I have lots of documents I can share with you as well, so feel free to fill out that form, and someone from our team will reach out to you as soon as possible. But right now, I need you to forget everything you think about iron and women's health. What Peter's about to share is going to change everything. Grab your notebook, grab a nice warm coffee, grab your pen, find a quiet spot, and let's dive in. Welcome to Strength for Generations, the go-to podcast for Christian families who want to build strength, restore energy, and deepen connection with God at the center. I'm Krista Baker, Christian health coach, wife, mom, and co-founder of Baker Family Fitness. I'm here to help you honor God with your health and bring peace back to the process, to simplify what it means to build strength in your body, renew your mind, and care for your spirit, all without losing precious time with your family. So grab your coffee and your ribeye, and let's do this His way. So we are going to talk about women's health and what we experience. And if we have some time, we're going to dive into our kids. But why don't we talk a little bit about, the female cycle and what you see around the whole iron issues that women feel that they deal with on a monthly basis.
Okay. All right. So going to female metabolism. So obviously everybody knows different, and the requirements of blood reproduction, red blood cells concentration, iron concentration are a little different than women and than men. Okay. Let's start with cycles. Very important thing is to know when people develop iron overload and female develop a lot faster, natural way, of course, because they have cycles, menstrual cycles. And this is actually a natural way to provide divine concept of bloodlet. See, every so often you have a bloodlet. And one of the main things about, cycle is to release buildup of iron, because our body knows when the iron is overloaded, it creates the most dangerous environment for the baby to be conceived, because iron and a lot of factors with iron could be actually very important in infertility, and they cause infertility, as well as any type of neurological problems for the baby after the conception and throughout the pregnancy. So the cycles, when they happen, we basically witness a body cleansing out of excessive iron to create a very good environment, to create a new possibility to replicate red blood cells in the fetus. Now, very important thing is, if the cycles start to get too heavy and we develop what we call iron deficiency anemia, which we know it's not deficiency, it's basically too much iron is led because there is not enough iron binding protein to form hemoglobin and red blood cells. So you have too much free iron floating. So that's what the cycles will be so heavy, because you dumping more than the body is supposed to, but this is the self defense mechanism. Okay. And then the levels were checked are usually hemoglobin. Again, it's a formation of the blood cells, but this doesn't mean that the person's still iron deficient, because most likely it's iron overload somewhere else. And again, it's the deficiency of iron binding amino acids and proteins, which create the formation of hemoglobin. So just a very low intake of proteins, okay, and fats during the cycles and before and after, it creates very hostile environment for women to go through. And actually, every time it's happened more and more and more. Now, for instance, one of the iron overload when women start to develop, it's correlated to polycystic ovarian syndrome, as well endometriosis. Endometriosis is been known it's caused by hemochromatosis. Okay, so which means you already have a not just iron overload, but you have a hemochromatosis, which in a lot of cases becomes very dangerous for a woman, and then of course completely stops them from conceiving a baby. From latest statistic, just telling you, in United States, at the moment, this last year, 2024, was around 7.5 million women, which means you have a 7.5 million women with hemochromatosis already. Okay. Now, what happened later in life, when women stop, they go through menopause, coincidentally, menopause happened at the time when most of the women become insulin resistant and turn diabetic eventually. So you have two factors. First, you're not feeding the organs properly because you don't have a red blood cells and hemoglobin. You don't have enough amino acids, proteins, and fats to support hormonal reproduction, and you're going to the natural way of degradation of certain hormones due strictly to menopause. So because they happen at the same time, everybody blames menopause, but if you check most of the women, they will be actually insulin resistant and a lot of them diabetic. And statistically, anybody who that age is insulin resistant, by age of 65, 65 to 70% of those women will be diagnosed with diabetes type 2 mellitus. So it's just happened at the same time. Secondarily, menopause required to support the hormonal secretion. Well, we know that most of the women, unfortunately, they avoid fat, a good fat. Well, fat is necessary to create hormones. If you don't have a protein, which is the matrix of every hormone, and fat is part of lipoprotein, which creates hormone, how are you going to create hormones when you don't have the material to build them? It's just logical, okay? But this is also endocrinological fact. So that's what how it affects. Now, when women stop having a cycles, then they develop hemochromatosis, and that's when they actually require bloodletting treatments to get rid of excessive iron. When men, they have bloodletting through all their lives because they don't have a natural release of excessive iron because men don't have the menstrual cycles. So right there, the deplenishment of amino acids and protein, sulfur and fats, it creates additional complication through menopause. Now, going further, that's what makes women so much prone to conditions like bone density problems, okay? Because the bones are made from amino acids. The calcium and minerals are just fillers. The matrix and structure of the bone, it's all protein, and there's two amino acids protein called osteoclast and osteoblast, which create and also discard all bones. So when the osteoclast is the first protein which removes the old bone to be replaced, like every cell in the body, we constantly rebuild and replace, they lacking that protein. And then the second protein is called osteoblast, which replace the old bone. There is not enough to create a new bone. And it's called osteopenia or osteoporosis. So strictly, again, amino acids, sulfur bonded protein deficiency, and the fats. At the same time, when I mention about bile dysfunction, they already have fatty liver and bile dysfunction secretion. So, on the top of the lack of protein and fats, the bile is not emulsify vitamin A, K, D, and E. Vitamin K and D, it's called as a common language calcifying minerals. They are involved in bone hardening. But if the bile is not working, you have a problem with amino acids, osteoblasts, osteoclasts not forming the matrix of the bone, but then you don't absorb calcium, vitamin D, and K because you have a liver problem, gallbladder problem, and the bile. So you don't have those minerals to be delivered to the bone tissue to harden it, to make it strong. Well, that's cause osteoporosis. And that's why it's very common in menopause for women to develop that condition. Now, on the other hand, there's a lot of different things which happen, but that's very, very common with that period of time. And at the same time, what women experience thinning hair and hair loss because the same collagen type 1, it's made from 700 sulfur bonded, which creates the bone and creates also skin, nails, and hair, etc. We have around different 18 to 25 collagen types. Some of them even require 2,000 amino acids to be reproduced. Now, how are you going to get them if you don't eat protein, which is sulfur bonded to create that collagen? Now, collagens, when people take collagen, they're not sulfur bonded. There is no 708 amino acids, which means they will never turn in the full developed protein. They will always, they are called peptides, and peptides are only beginning or middle structure of proteins. They never become a full sequence of protein. And that's how it goes. Now, during the pregnancy, also iron is very important. Just to mention very quick, women develop gestational diabetes. Is the main complication of pregnancy. Most of the birth defects comes from the gestational diabetes. What do they become? They become iron overload. When they have iron overload, the hemoglobin is not working. Now, the fetus have a different type of hemoglobin. Until the baby comes out from mother's womb, the fetus have fetus hemoglobin or fetal hemoglobin is different. It actually have different oxygen level than the adult human or newborn baby. So the process of developing baby, it's also being dysfunctionally distracted because of iron accumulation in the body. And iron actually, when it's not utilized, causes dysfunction in the formation of the whole body, but mainly also in the third trimester nervous system. And iron is being not utilized, causing the dysfunction of myelin sheaths formation, which is a lack of fat from fatty liver from the mother, and creating myelin sheaths, which is the lining of the nervous system and the brain, to develop nervous system just to accomplish what is called full myelization of the nervous system in the baby. And that's what so many different neurological problems happen in the newborn babies, induced through iron overload, which is also induced by prenatal vitamins being overloaded with iron, and also iron infusion because of the total and wrong misconception about iron deficiency.
There's like a term that my doctor used.
Yeah.
I had gallstones. This is a couple years ago, 4 Fs or something, like
Mhm.
40, like I don't remember what it was, and then fat. And he goes, "Well, you don't have like a lot of body fat on you, but it's just normal for women that are perimenopausal."
Well, it's normal in the case because they deal with it. It's abnormal because it's never supposed to happen. Because when you have a gallstones, you have a severe bile production problem. You have a two condition from the liver condition, which is called, I told you, chronic liver cholestasis, and two complication of it. It's called obstruction of bile duct or bile duct cirrhosis, and this is actually causes gallstone because the calcium and all the minerals, instead being processed and utilize and move further out of the gallbladder, they start to actually emulsify very little in the gallbladder, and they start to turn into gallstones, which makes eventually severe complication, and they have to remove. So if something organ has to be removed, you are not gonna call this that this is natural process of the human body.
It just stood out to me because I was thinking about when he said that to me. First of all, don't talk to me like that. I feel like I'm still young. You know what I mean? I just turned 40. I was like, you better ease up. But, anyways, it was something that I had to work through. And now I really understand what's happening thanks to you. I really appreciate your guidance here. A lot of us moms, so we have babies born. But you had mentioned before something that happens by the time that they're two. And then
Yes.
and then what does that do for like the role in kid health? Like how can we as moms, because moms want to hear this message, how can we help our children?
Okay. But very important thing, one of the purpose of glucoferrin is the glucoferrin is safe and is very highly recommended for women to take while they're pregnant because it prevents them from developing insulin resistance and gestational diabetes. Secondarily, when the baby is born, the baby in 48 hours, it has to change from the fetus hemoglobin to the newborn human hemoglobin, which means it's going to be changed in absorption and transport of oxygen, glycogen, nitrogen, sulfur, and everything else. So this is a crucial point. And the concept of the mother passing milk, it's very important that mother nurses the baby because the baby gets genetic code how to actually survive outside of the mother's womb. One of the first gene, it's actually called MVK, and this gene is actually responsible in the baby, in the mother's milk, which is 708 amino acids, sulfur bonded, to create immediate response to create the gene which secretes potential to be the liver, gallbladder, and bile. Bile is essential with cholesterol to build immediately strong bones, muscle, and tissue so the newborn can survive outside of the mother's womb without then endangering its own life, which means that gene has to create bile and cholesterol basically ASAP to make a baby grow bones and muscle and all the supporting tissue to support the organs from being damaged. So this is very important. Secondly, the red blood cells need to have a coat, an iron binding protein and sequestering protein and chelating protein. So the baby start to develop liver and then learns how to deal with pathogens and environment hazard like metals, heavy metals, any type of, iron overload by production of its own glutathione. We have to produce our own. So that's another form that the baby creates glutathione to protect itself and it's getting involved in protection from the pathogens. Okay. So once the baby is born, then it has 48 hours to change this to be exposed to the pathogens and start to react with its antibodies and protection to the further life. And this has happened every 2, 3 months. So actually, the first 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, up to 30 years of the life of the baby have to develop a perfect system to actually be able to fight every type of pathogen or environmental hazard which will encounter in life. Without mother's milk, it cannot do this because there is no genetic code. And if you have baby formulas, they do not have a genetic code because we all come from the same gene from the parents. And at the same time, these codes will actually create the perfect replication of the genes in our body to create sustainable environment for the baby to withstand every type of problem which can occur after the birth. And iron is could be very big obstacle because when the baby is already raised and developed and the environment high in iron already has compromised nervous system, immune system, red blood cell system. When it comes from the mother, it's already severely compromised. Already most of the children are born with iron overload. And we know also that also hemochromatosis, it's very common, pass in the HFE gene, which is the gene which passes hemochromatosis. And we also know that, for instance, type 1 diabetes, juvenile diabetes, it's actually part of genetically passed hemochromatosis and also other different conditions. So if the mother have the hemochromatosis, most likely child's gonna have it, or if it doesn't have it, if it's gonna be environment raised by the high iron intake, like fortified food or baby's formulas, it will develop weakness in that particular gene, which makes him susceptible for any further complication and further life. So it's very important to nurse the mother, the baby with the mother's milk. At the same time, when you provide glucoferrin, if the mother's milk is not potent enough because she doesn't have source of the food to make it potent, it supports the mother's milk and the baby to the smooth transition and continuously to make the baby as strong as said, mentally and physically fit. And that's why then when the babies develop all kinds of different problems at a young age, they strictly iron overload and they have no glutathione secretion in their body, and they basically have no strength to withstand any environmental risk of getting sick or any way, get compromised for future life. It doesn't happen first, usually 3 years, and then it just goes every year getting worse. The reason is also food fortification with iron. It has to stop.
Just summarize that. Avoid iron fortified for your children. Avoid iron fortified formulas. Avoid iron fortified foods. Iron fortified baby cereals. Prenatal vitamins have non-heme iron. These are all contributing to iron overload and setting the baby up for, tough time, many metabolic abnormalities.
And what about the moms that actually don't produce the milk?
Well, that's another thing. Yeah, yeah.
It's a very real thing, or like baby doesn't latch, or like baby's tongue tied. Like some of these things are very traumatic and very.
When you mention tongue tied, right? Tongue tied actually is one of the side effects of hemochromatosis. It's a proven fact actually.
Wow.
type. That's hemochromatosis already.
And so, like, what would we say to the mom that didn't produce the milk? Like, what is the option? Like, okay, another question too, like, how do we get glucoferrin into a baby?
It's very easy. You open the capsule, you put the powder.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I give it to my kids. I'm like, just
Yeah.
down the hatch.
Yeah. So if the mother, let's say, if the mother use any formula or any milk, whatever she choose to use it, you just open the capsule and you put in there, and that's what makes actually the best quality mother's milk you can ever get. So, and the mother also, it's very important for the mother to take it. The reason is, you see, the iron overload, it's also one of the reason of postpartum depression because they're so depleted and the iron overload. So postpartum depression is one of the side effects of that too. And how many women go to postpartum depression? Lots of.
Yeah.
Remember, I have a nursing medical degree. I work at hospital and I actually with delivering babies, and I've seen how many women get postpartum depression.
Yes. So many. And it's a very real thing. So, okay, I'm trying to think if there's any other questions that I know moms are going to ask. I don't know, Christy, is anything coming to you?
No, not really. I just want to reiterate that, most of us think we're doing a good thing. We're giving these iron fortified baby formulas and cereals. And then on top of it, we're adding vitamin C that helps non heme absorption and Flintstone vitamins or whatever. We just really need to focus on feeding our children the best that we can with proper human diet, if I could borrow that from Kim Berry. But, as much as healthy meats and fats that we can get, minimize processed foods. And I think you're going to be setting them up for success. If you add the glucoferrin during your prenatal care and your
Yep.
postnatal, you probably be
Well,
producing the milk and you'll be just fine, right?
Very true. That's one of the one of the reasons that premises has developed glucoferrin is because I really want those kids to get healthy again. Because this is what's happening to children right now. Is just will make my night sleepless, And I spent so many years on that because I am very pro children health and I want to do everything. And I know I already have children being born while the mother took glucoferrin when they were breastfeeding, and they're right now, on their own, and they're just the most amazing, beautiful babies you can ever see it.
you said earlier too, the fatty liver, like kids are like 9 years old, 6 years old, and they're getting fat. Well, you're like, you're not an alcoholic.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I've seen actually, I did consultation with the young parents who have a 6 years old with unexplained neurological disorder and fatty liver. 6 years old.
Yeah, that breaks my heart too. I know. It really breaks my heart. We got to help these kids for sure. One other question that came to me.
And a lot of these kids are getting like repeat antibiotics at the pharmacy.
Oh, yeah. That's another thing. Yeah.
That's all thriving. That's thriving off of iron. So, like Peter said, the bacteria, the pathogens, the virus, the fungus, their metabolism thrives off of that iron. So, if we can control that,
Yeah,
about antibiotics as nearly as much,
true.
And another thing I would just say, well, when I send you, I didn't have a time today. The RDA recommended daily, allowance of vitamins, so called. Okay, they actually originally was started in 1941. They get updated. Okay, but if you look the amounts how they are updated and all the fortification how it's based on RDA and everything, it's absolutely saying makes no sense is a actually very light version, what you would like to actually call it, because there is no science of proving of iron fortification, synthetic iron fortification, niacin fortification, folic acid fortification, considering what the food is right now changed, how it's chemically altered, how people, the size of the people. So the RDA as a general guidelines of food and food fortification, it should be basically non-existent because there is not one person from that organization who will prove this one scientific point of their guidelines. I mean, no.
Well, okay. That's really interesting. And I do have one last question because you said something to us earlier about, like, I think it's good for moms to hear this, like, again, if they haven't heard before. When we're looking at labels and it says, do not take if you're pregnant,
Right there.
right? Like,
Walk away.
yeah. And and the glucopharen is safe.
It's actually recommended for mothers. We recommend.
All right, moms, I want to hear from you today. So shoot questions my way, shoot questions all of our ways. Like, thank you so much for being here yet again. And let's continue to get moms to hear this message because, moms, we are innately made to nurture and take care of our children. And it's up to us to really like make sure we do that.
So let's make a slogan. Make our children healthy again.
Amen, brother. Let's do it. Okay, wow. I know it's a lot to take in, right? I know peyote just completely flips everything that you thought you knew about iron fatigue and women's health. If you're sitting there right now thinking, wait, so my heavy periods are actually my body trying to help me, you're not alone. This information, I truly believe, is life-changing. I know that from my own personal experience, but I also know how overwhelming this can feel. So what I want you to do right now is first, don't panic. Don't panic about all the iron supplements you've taken or the fortified foods you've been eating. Your body is incredibly resilient. And now that you know the truth, you can start to make better choices moving forward. Second, if this resonated with you, if you're tired of being tired, if you're struggling with heavy periods or you're concerned about your children's health, I want you to take action. You're going to head over to bakerfamilyfitness.com/glucopharen right now. You're going to fill out the form and someone from our team will get back to you. You'll also see a lot of information about how glucopharen supports your body's natural iron regulation and helps build the healthy red blood cells that you actually need. This is not just another supplement, my friends. This is a patented protein that works the way your body was designed to function. Remember, you don't have to stay exhausted. You don't have to accept that feeling terrible is just part of being a woman. Like, rebuke that right now. And you definitely don't have to watch your kids struggle with their health when there's a better way. Now, before we wrap up, let us pray. Father God, I thank you for each woman and husband listening today. The ones that are tired of feeling tired and worn down. Lord, you created our bodies fearfully and wonderfully, and I pray that you give each of us wisdom to steward our health well. Help us to discern truth from lies when it comes to our bodies. Give us courage to make the changes we need to make and strength to pursue the health you desire for us. Bless our families, protect our children, and help us to be the strong, energetic families that you've called us to be. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks for tuning in to Strength for Generations. If this podcast encouraged you, it would be a blessing if you took a quick minute to leave a 5-star review. It helps more families hear this message and find hope for their health and faith journey. It lights me up to know this podcast is helping you. And if you feel led to share this episode, text it to a friend, post it to your stories, or send it to someone on your heart. God might use it to encourage someone who really needs it today. And don't forget to eat steaks, lift weights, love Jesus, and keep doing it His way.